Okay, so now that we have extracted the data, the next step is to actually import the data. In order to import the data, we need two things. We need to have a fragment. This is the piece of the process that these events that we want to import get mapped to, and we need to have the data events. We already took care of the data events with our extraction video. So now what I want to show you is how to create an event. And to do this, I'm going to show you the file structure of PPM. So here you see again, we have our structure in PPM. We have the custom folder that contains all of the clients. And right now we're working in the train client. And in this client, we always have these sort of folders. And the one that we are worried about right now is the XML folder. This is the folder that contains all of the configuration. And it also contains a folder for each data source. And inside a data source, we have the fragments right here. So there's a file that contains the fragments. We can verify all of this by looking here at the data source. So here in my data source, I can check out these files right here. Those are all the extraction files, and here we see all the different configuration files. And in addition to these files we have up here, we also have the process fragments, which are defined right here. So in our train, we have XML, in there we have workflow, and in here we have the fragment file. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to open this file and just check it out. And here is my fragment file. And so the fragment file is again an XML file that contains the fragments. Now you can create those fragments in arrays, but it's so simple to make these fragments that I rather just hack them myself in XML. So let's take a look at this particular structure here. So we have a graph list, and a graph list means that we can have different graphs. And a graph in this case is a process. And so a fragment is just a very simple, small process. So a process has objects and it has connections between these objects. Think about a graph or a process model that you would draw. You have different types of objects and then you connect them with edges. And exactly this is what's going on here as well. We have different node types. So for instance, ot_func is a function. And then here we have events. And again, this is kind of the arrays notation of an EPC, event-driven process chain. So we have here a start event and an end event, and they are connected with these edges here, so that we can basically start with a start event. So this is the first connection. It starts with the start event, goes to the function, and then from the function we go to the end event. So what I'm going to do now, I'm simply going to copy this graph, and I'm going to create my own graph. And so here this is kind of a dummy fragment that every data source comes with. And so I want to give my graph a different name. I'm going to call them work items, because this is kind of what these graphs are all about. And then we just kind of change the name here of the function. I'm going to call it function. So I always call my functions fct underscore and then the name. So I'm going to call this fct work items. Now a function or an object comes with attributes, and you can basically write whatever attribute you want into this function. And so the at_object name, that's the name that you see on the front end. So that's the actual name you see in the process model. So that's kind of the English name. So I'm going to call this work item. And then we also have the technical name, and the technical name always needs to be the same as this ID. So I'm just going to copy this and replace it here. I'm going to leave the start and the end event like they are. So now all I have to do is change these edges. So I'm just going to replace here my function, and then I'm done. So very, very easy to create these fragments. I just basically created my own fragment, and so we have created a different type of fragment. Now in this particular case where we only have one event, it doesn't really make sense. I could actually just use the catch-all if I were lazy. But think about you had different type of data sources, different type of processes. So this is why we would like to have different type of fragments that represent different things. So here we now have our work item fragments, and I can use that. So now that I've created this work item fragment, I can go back into the CTK.